The biggest lie that we've been sold about creativity that it's only a select few, that, you have to be Elon Musk or Steve Jobs in order to be creative. There's nothing further from the truth. So in the new book, The Solution Mindset, I literally went around the world and found 10 people that are doing amazing everyday things to improve creativity. And you're going to love this one.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest from the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. Folks, my guest today is Nir Bashan, and if I ruin his name, I'm in trouble because it's at the bottom of his screen here. He is a keynote speaker, a best-selling author who talks about creativity, innovation, problem-solving at work, and not just for people who think they're creative. And Nir spent years in Hollywood and then many more in advertising, my bread and butter where I'm from. And now he helps leaders and frontline teams alike unlock creativity where it actually matters on the job. And he believes creativity is a skill, not a personality trait. Interesting. He also thinks he's funny, loves dogs, West Ham United, and a good watch in no particular order. So let's get to it. Nir, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. We've connected on LinkedIn, and he has been persistent as a guest request in a good way, the right way. So I applaud you for that. And I think a lot of guest outreach, listen, like, as a podcast host, we get and I've been doing the show for a long time, and, the show's picked up a lot of traction and people want to be on it. And I'm very selective, and I'm not selective just for myself. I'm selective for my audience, right? I want to make sure that my audience is getting value from folks. And I did my research on you, and I'm excited to have you. So first and foremost, before we really get into the nuts and bolts here, I'm always curious. May I ask what your parents did for a living?
Yeah, nobody's ever asked me that. So my mom was a nursery school teacher for many, many years, pretty much her entire career. And then my dad worked at public storage. So he was like a storage guy. So that's what they did. Yeah.
Interesting. I love that. Both my parents were teachers, New York City Board of Ed for 30 plus years. My brother's in education, and I'm the black sheep who I don't even know what I do. Right. Everyone asks you what do you do here? So I'm curious. You worked on the agency side as a creative director, copy specific. Was that always your dream? Were you a creative kid? Like, how did you get into the creative side of marketing and business?
Yeah. So when I came over to the U.S., I couldn't speak English, right?
From where?
Israel. So I'm from Israel. Came over here and, gravitated toward music because it was kind of the universal language, right? And I was doing the ESL classes. Do you remember that back in the day? Like, do they still have those programs?
I think they've rebranded them.
They rebranded them. Yeah. Oh, man. But I sat in those, learning bathroom and all of this stuff. And I always liked music, even really young. And so I got into music and was
Is that how you learned English? Is that how you learned English? Through music or
through
TV?
songs, man. Yeah, through songs and lyrics and stuff like that.
Any bands, groups in particular? What are you wearing there? All right, now you're wearing a Rush shirt. So we'll get a sidebar on Rush because Rush is one of my guilty pleasures. Yeah. The tour is coming back. It's hitting MSG. Tickets are literally astronomical. Neil Peart. Top. The best. Well, he's in my three. He's in my. John Bonham's up there. I got a couple of
Bonham's up there too. Yeah. Wow.
So you learn English through music. You had the creativity side to you, and I have to imagine like you had to start learning how to read and write in English too.
Yeah. So that all kind of happened at the same time, and I loved the creative sort of track. Then, was in band throughout high school, and we toured Los Angeles, the whole deal, playing all the nightclubs and stuff like that. And then finally, I went to film school and did, well, actually, I went to music school and then was, at USC. So you're next door. Double bass, like stand up.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. So I can see why you're a Geddy Lee fan, right? Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Rush rules. So then that's kind of how it came together. I was writing scripts and doing screenplays in Hollywood, and advertising was always a steady paycheck, right? So that's really how I started going in advertising. Is just, I would get paid to come on to a project, help out the team, and I did it more and more and more until it became a full-time job.
Yeah, and listen, I spent the first 15 years of my career on the agency side. I was in account management, and it was a lot different back then. And listen, every industry is an evolution. But I remember because I was on the fringe of where we're still the Madman
Yeah.
days, and I was in awe of two folks in the agency space. I was in awe of that creative director that could come in and just articulate a story, an ad, a feeling, a vibe, right? And like draw the attention of the client and really like it was an energy and an excitement in the room. And that's something that really inspired me in the world. And then it was the account folks too who were able to sell it and also sell the vision as well and bring that together. That's it's almost long gone now where it's almost a commodity at this point. Like, are we losing the creative side? I mean, yes, there's some great creative that's coming out there, but with all this technology, like what's your take?
Yeah, I think the ad world has gotten a little bit, it's kind of an outsider opinion. I don't work every day in that business anymore, but yeah, it's gotten a little bit stale. I think when a lot of change is going on, people like to play it safe. So I think that's what's going on in that particular industry. People are playing it safe, and when you don't have an AI generated ad like the one that Porsche just put out, I don't know if you guys saw it, but it's beautiful, right? It's hand drawn. It's a beautiful nostalgic story about somebody who loves their car, and they go on this really kind of cool journey. And at the end, it's beautiful, and it's a vintage car, and everything kind of works out. So you're getting a lot of attention from the old school stuff. You know what, Adam? I was just at CES. Okay, I go every year.
Yeah.
CES is the huge.
Let's talk about your takeaways.
Consumer. Yeah, my takeaways were that there is a ton of vintage hashing or coming back. I saw, I don't know, maybe a half dozen booths with record players, straight up vinyl record players. We saw a bunch of people doing vintage video gaming, like
Super
you can do a
8s,
game that
yeah.
looks real right now. But like, why, when, Legend of Zelda from 83 or 5 or whatever was
Original
the best
Mario's
game
are
ever.
great, right? Even
So
stuff like Duck Hunt, right? Those are fun.
100%. So I think there's a kind of a rehash of what is old is kind of new again. Now that you can do things with AI that are so high end, maybe sometimes we lose that experience in going, photo real.
Too. I'm curious. Yeah, it's so funny you say that, and to quote the great Gary V, he's talking a lot now where everybody wants to be in the Jetsons, but you know what really still works? It's the Flintstone stuff, right? It's the Flintstone shit that works, and it's true. And like you're not just speaking to the boomers and the Gen X's and the Gen Z's, but like you know what the younger folks out there, the alphas and everything. Yes, they're tech forward, tech first, and all that, but the old stuff works and it's tangible and it's physical. And I think that's something that we need to get back to and find the blend. So I'm curious, like, what do you think has changed most since your time on the agency side 20 plus years ago?
What took most of my time?
No, what do you think has really changed, right? From a creative process standpoint, is the process still there?
Yeah, I think that, I think on the client side, there's a desire to take less risk. On the agency side, there's so many changes going on, and different conglomerates are merging and separating and all of this stuff. So I think it's really hard for a good creative to come out of those shops that are doing work that is, really, really high end. I think that's kind of what's going on in general in that industry.
So I'm curious. You spent years in Hollywood, now corporate culture. What did those worlds teach you about creativity that the workplaces is still getting wrong? Like, what did you learn back then, and like what was working then that you see is just not working now? What are we losing?
So I think we're moving toward a pretty lonely and isolated type of society. I think that social media has led to the demise of connectivity. I see a lot of loneliness today in people, how they interact and all of this stuff, Adam. And I think that's why they crave the old, the Flintstones, right? They crave the old record players and analog and things that aren't digital and things that aren't served up on a platter 24/7 that you have to work a little bit to get. I think that's kind of the nostalgic or desire to connect and have some kind of meaning. So I think we're a little bit lost in terms of the meaning of what it is that we want to do.
What are your thoughts? I mean, around in-person collaboration and the value to, and we're talking, and I stand on I preach on my soapbox on this one. Like, yes, you could be creative, collaborative remotely, but there's something about being in a room together, ideation, bringing that together, and we're missing it. And I think we're seeing the negative output of that. What's your take?
100%. I talk about that in the new book, The Solution Mindset, which is really to get together and do stuff in person. I talk about networking events. I talk about how you should engage with people in a room, and that engagement is totally different than the engagement that you have online, and it's incredibly valuable. Adam, I think the old school skills are starting to become the new school get ahead techniques.
Let's dig into this one, because this is something I've been really pontificating on for a while here. I think that a lot of folks have lost the ability, younger folks and even some older folks like us, to communicate human to human. We're so tied into technology and being easy to text, WhatsApp, Slack, whatever, that when we're finally in a room with people, and I blame COVID for this big time because it really isolated us and put into silos, that it's the lost art of talking, of conversation, communicating with people. We're all shorthand, acronyms, IDK, all these little acronyms that we use. And I have to learn a whole new language in my 13 and 7-year-olds too. And that's fine. That's an evolution of language. We all had our slang back then too. But I get onto the phone as a recruiter with candidates, and some of them are just not able to articulate their story well. They're all over the place. They're missing the art of communication and being able to, story tell. And it doesn't always have to be creative, right? So a lot of people hear the word creativity or being creative, and they immediately think that's not me. Where do you think that fear comes from, where they can't be creative?
So we've studied this left and right, and I have made a living out of going out and doing keynotes and writing books and writing articles. I'm one of the top downloaded article writers or whatever for Psychology Today. So, millions of views. We found that back in the day, 40, 50, 60,000 years ago, creativity was the difference in keeping us alive, right? We weren't the strongest. We weren't the best. We weren't, there was people with the animals with bigger teeth that would just rip into our flesh. We were the most creative, and that's why we're here today. And somewhere along the way, we kind of lost it, man. We loved spreadsheets and we love looking at Excel. Believe me, I love Excel. I was on Excel before this podcast today. I'm like doing some stuff, doing payroll, making sure everything's going right. But we fell in love with the analytics, and we've let go of the creative, and we need to balance both out if we ever hope to get to where we need to go. So I feel like that's what we really need to do right now.
Yeah, it's analysis paralysis. I want to shift gears a bit and talk about reframing creativity, something you talk about a lot. And you talk about creativity as a skill rather than a personality trait. What is that biggest lie that we've been sold about who gets to be creative at work?
The biggest lie that we've been sold about creativity, that it's only a select few, that, you have to be Elon Musk or, Steve Jobs in order to be creative. There's nothing further from the truth. So in the new book, The Solution Mindset, I literally went around the world and found 10 people that are doing amazing everyday things to improve creativity. And you're going to love this one. So in one of the chapters, I cover a friend of mine named Gil Winch. And Gil Winch ran a really, huge company for a while, made all this money, did really well. And then one day he goes to the doctor and they do his normal blood stuff. And they're like, dude, you have terminal 4 cancer. You're going to die in 2 weeks. Literally.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? So he quits his job instantly, does what the doctors tell him. He's like, guys, I'm going to start running. I'm going to eat better. Does all the research, and gets in really good shape, right? Quits his job, walks away. And he goes, man, I need to do something that gives me some meaning, right? I don't want to just get a paycheck. I need meaning in my life, right? I need something to keep me going. Goes to a party one night, sees his friend. His friend's in a wheelchair. Right. And he goes, hey, man, how's it going? He's like, man, I just got dumped again. What do you mean dumped? He's like, oh, I was at this company and then I got let go. He's like, you got let go? Why'd you get let go? You're one of the smartest dudes I know. He's like, man, you have no idea, Gil, how hard it is for disabled people to find work. Boom, right? The light bulb goes off. So now Gil has one of the largest businesses where he hires disabled people and places them like a placement agency almost.
Right.
And he's got a playbook and he replicates it in a bunch of different countries, everyone from blind people to deaf people, on and on, disabilities seen, disabilities unseen. And he's able to kind of give meaning to people's life by doing this creatively. And nothing would have come about had he have not said, hey, I can connect the disabled person and a job really easily. And it gave him meaning, and he's still alive. That diagnosis now was 11 or 12 years ago, and he's still going strong.
Hey everybody, Adam here from the Podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you by the team at Fountain. Fountain is your full-service frontline workforce management platform. I have to tell you, Fountain's offerings are some of the most robust I've seen for any product in the space. They offer full solutions for hiring, managing, and retention. They are truly a one-stop shop focused on the frontline workforce. They also create informative content using their data. For example, they analyze a bunch of data from their fast food chains and created a trend report you could download now on their website. They also have a new ebook out called Frontline Voices. There's a lot to dive into. Certainly check it out. And you can learn more at fountain.com, linked in the show notes. Thank you. God bless. And right, like creativity isn't about the big ideas or the lightning bolts. I'm sure it is, but like, what is it about on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like?
It's making the transition to going, hey, this is a business here with this particular guy. This is something that I want to pursue. I have another story from the book, from chapter 1. We have a surfer from Tahiti, right? A guy named Tito on Benecott, and he's amazing. And basically, when he was 16, he surfed the same spot his whole life and noticed that there is no surf one day, right? So he dives in and he finds that the reef's kind of bleached out.
Yeah.
So he goes home and he Googles. Hey, this is everyday creativity, man. He Googles and he gets a few ideas. We all have a few ideas. And he goes and he talks to the scientists at the base. They have a marine biology department there in Tahiti. He goes and talks to them and they're like, dude, you're 16. Like, you need a PhD. You need to go to grad school. You need to do all of this stuff. Pay your dues. Dude, you're a kid. Come back in 10 years or 15 after you've written a few papers. And he was like,
you're blowing him off.
100%. And he said, guys, I love you. I love science, but like, I'm going to go do this. And Adam, he went and he got some rope and he got some reef and he tried to figure it out. That's the everyday genius that we need, that I need to inspire in your listeners, and that my life's work does, is inspiring people to do their own little creative venture,
one step
because we all
time.
Benefit from it.
Absolutely. And let's dial that in a bit more. And you work with frontline employees and not just leadership. Why is creativity arguably more important at the front line versus the boardroom?
Creativity is, I think, the most important thing that anybody can do, especially in the front line, because they have, the day-to-day responsibilities, and they are the people who can implement these problem-solving techniques and see instant results. That's why it's so important for the front line to be able to do that.
But there's a big piece of it too. It's like fear, like the fear of being wrong or looking stupid or getting in trouble. How does that play in the mindset of, shutting down innovation and creativity? Right? Because that's a fear, right? Like, I don't want to speak up. I have an idea. There's something going on in my head. Like, how do we break through the fears? I mean, obviously, I think it starts from leadership, right? Leadership embracing a culture of creativity and openness to share ideas. But how does an individual play? How do you break down that fear?
It's about jumping into the pool and getting things done. You take little steps every day and they evolve into something really significant. So it is about taking little steps. I talk in the book about writing things down when you get an idea. There's a full change in your mindset when you actually write something down versus just think about it. There is initiatives that you could take by just being present and in the moment and accepting that, hey, this is fear creeping up here. I get it. Let's do it. I even have a part in my book where I tell people to get things wrong on purpose, right? We're all in meetings all day. I say, get something wrong on purpose. They're like, oh, what do you mean? That's the worst advice ever. And I'm like, next time.
Break that down. Yes. I'm curious here.
Next time you're on a Zoom meeting or a Teams with your staff, right? And people are like, the third quarter results were such and such. You say, no, they weren't. They were double that. And then, there'll be like a pin drop and everyone will be like,
just kidding.
What? What's Nir talking about? There's no way. And he's so wrong. And what ends up happening is the fear that we build up in our heads from saying something like that is 10 times worse than what happens in real life. What will happen in real life is somebody will be like, oh, yeah, he must have added a 0 to it, right? And then they're over it because they have their own fears that they're thinking about. But what happens when you actually drop in a mistake on purpose is that you might catch something amazing. Maybe because you added that extra 0, maybe somebody will say, oh, that's not that, it was 10 times less. And then somebody in the room might say, well, why can't we get there?
Right. Like how do you use it as a motivator? That's fascinating. And it goes back to, I forgot what book I was reading. It was a while ago, but how to push your limits. And it starts with something like, say you're online at the bank.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a long line in front of you. Having the confidence to walk up to the first person online and ask them if you could cut them. Just trying to change your muscle memory there.
Yeah.
So the other part that I love, and I was doing the research here, you talk a lot about, this behavior shift of complaining versus creating. And I think it's funny. My wife would probably be like, I wish you would stop complaining more and create more. But in the workplace, I create more versus I complain. She's like, why can't you merge the two of them together? But you're big on shifting people from complaining to solving. Why is complaining seductive? I mean, I love to complain. I'm a kvetch, right? Like, this is what my people do over here, right? Complaining seductive. But how does that quietly drain, right? You know what I'm talking about. Like, how does that drain teams? How does that drain individuals complaining?
Yeah, dude. So really, I mean, complaining gets you nowhere, and it is literally wasted effort. If you read the Greeks, right, the Aristotle and Socrates and all that, they hated complainers, right? It literally does nothing but put steam out into the world that is not a practical and applicable solution. Complaining does nothing. We need to move past the thought that, hey, we can complain about something and it feels better. It doesn't feel better. It feels much better to solve our problems, right? So it's really about channeling it into something else. But Adam, we do have a historical tendency to complain. The downsides historically, when we were cavemen and women back in the day, was unlimited. I mean, the downside was the worst. The upside was like, yeah, okay, cool. We can eat for a few days or whatever. So we've developed language around the negativity around complaining.
Right. When someone says this sucks, it'll never work. Like, what's a better way to reframe? What's a better question or response that actually moves a conversation forward?
100%. So we've studied this. There's a 6-to-1 ratio in English of negative to positive words. So for every great, there's sucks, terrible, the worst, horrible.
Right.
There's 6-to-1, dude. And
wow.
I've looked at languages all over the world. There's something between a 4-to-1 and a 20-to-1 in every single language I've studied.
Language shapes outcomes. Of course it does.
Every single language I've studied. So we have a tendency to set up things that way. But if we just take 1 minute, Adam, to reshift how we say something, instead of, hey, this really sucks or this isn't working, you say, let's look at ways for this to work. Or let's look at how we can improve what is working or not working and move it to the next level. Stuff like that always gets results.
Right. But let's talk about it in practical application. For someone who's listening, they're like, all right, Adam, I get it. Still don't feel creative. I'm listening to this show. Nir saying some interesting things. I'm going to go check out his book. But what's a simple habit or exercise that they could start using right now?
So changing your language is something you can use right now. I worked with an organization that brought me in because there's silos, right? So Nir, figure out the silos. Silos are generally communication issues. I said, guys, why won't you communicate with this other department? They're like, and everyone kept it, so I said, guys, what is it? They're like, well, we email and they don't email us back. Show me the last 10 emails, right? And I look at the last 10 emails. Adam, something your listeners can do right now. Look at your last 10 emails, okay? Look at the language that you're using. Is it, get me this invoice by tomorrow? I need this yesterday, comma, your name, not even a signature or whatever. If you change the language and you say, hi, Timmy, thank you, hope you're doing well. I'm glad the kids are doing great. Little Johnny's in baseball and doing really great in that. Super cool that you guys are volunteering. Say hi to the coach when you get a chance. Hey, if you don't mind, please send over that invoice, right? Then he emails you back right away. He goes, yeah, dude, little Johnny's doing great. hey, the coach asked about you because, coach is a vendor and he's got that business. And you go, oh, crap, dude, that's great. I got to go talk to the coach because maybe I could do work with him. And when we are positive, when we use positive language, we generate opportunity.
Amen to that one, right? So, all right, let me ask you this. If you were dropped into a dysfunctional team tomorrow, what is the first creative rule or constraint that you would introduce to change behavior quickly? What would be the first move? After you spent the time to like analyze, listen, learn.
I would ask them to reframe their language, use positivity instead of negativity. Instead of looking at what's wrong, look at what's right. Instead of complaining, come up with solutions. So I would say, guys, great. I know that this is really difficult here. Instead of saying why it's difficult, which everyone knows that it's difficult, you're responsible for coming up with 3 ideas of your own that will help solve that difficulty. And people get excited about that, man. They're like, cool, the boss never told me that I'm able to solve these problems, and they go and do it.
Interesting too. So let's talk about the inverse of that. Let's talk about the cost of not addressing creativity or problem solving or using the right language work, especially in this world moving so fast. What's the real cost of that?
The cost of not doing that is being stale, is staying where you are, is not growing, is, just not getting where you need to go. And that's the essence of why we get stuck and why we're not happy. Dude, I do a lot of research on burnout and stuff like that. And people tell me all the time, Nir, my boss is an idiot. So how can I get ahead?
Right.
And I tell them, do the assignment twice. And they're like, what? Dude, I'm triple booked from 8 to 5:30. I'm in nonstop meetings. I don't even have time to do the work because I'm in meetings about the work.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, it's great. Do the assignment twice. What do you have to do? Oh, I have to do the first quarter analytics. Great. How do you do it? It's 17 pages. It's regulatory, Nir. I said, do you have an idea of how to do it better? Of course. I would cut this out. I would add graphs here, and then I would wrap it up by doing this. I said, have you ever done it? No, my boss won't let me. Okay, what's preventing you from doing it? And they're like, wait, nothing except time. I said, make the time and do it. And 9 out of 10 times when people actually do it, Adam, they're going, oh man,
it's an unlock. This is
so
a huge
much
unlock.
better.
Taking that
100%.
first step. Taking the first step is, I think that's the
100%.
hardest thing with anything out there, is taking the first step out there. So let's talk about the book, The Solution Mindset. Who is it for?
This book, The Solution Mindset, is for anybody who wants to become more creative at work and in their community. I look at world issues and I boil them down to something anybody can do, no matter what they do. You're a gardener, you're a mechanic, you're a CEO of some company. You can take these amazing things that people are doing to heal the world and apply them in your business and your day-to-day.
I love it. So I'm curious. What did you learn about yourself through the process of writing this specific book?
That I
at this time in your life, at this moment, like, you put a lot of work and effort and research into it. Like, what did you learn?
I learned that I am sometimes the dentist with bad teeth, where I don't
the plumber with a broken toilet in my case.
You know what I mean? So I've learned to start following my own advice. That's really what I've learned. I talk a lot in the book about social media and how awful it is, and I took it off my phone. It's gone. There's no social app. I literally followed the recipe that I put in the book, which is do social for half an hour a day. It's a necessary evil if you're in our kind of business. You got to do it.
I took Facebook. I took a small step. I took Facebook. I took Facebook off immediately.
Off your phone?
Off my phone, and I rarely check it. I check it maybe once every 3 or 4 days just to see whose birthdays I missed. I don't miss it. Instagram, I need to keep on for work purposes. LinkedIn, obviously, that's my home base. But if you're removing the doom scrolling is just making you dumber. I'm trying to remove the brain rot from, in front of my kids. We're going to link up the book below. Everyone's going to check it out. Don't worry about that one. But I want to bring it home here. Nir, what's keeping you up at night these days?
What's keeping me up at night is basically the negativity of the media, the, doom and gloom that we're faced with every single day, especially on social, but on other channels too. I view the world as a hopeful place where a lot of really, really good things are happening. But it drives me nuts that the negative keeps being amplified, not, the
that's what sells tickets. That's what sells tickets.
Yeah, it's not right, man. It's not right. We got to change it. And so I am on a solitary mission with actually quite a bit of people that are trying to make mattering more important in the world and make things that are important highlighted.
Love it. Favorite Rush song?
Oh man, YYZ.
I'm Red Barchetta, but that's
wow.
Yeah, I just love the
Same
story.
album.
I love the story. It's that song just lands with me. So Nir, last but not least, you have reached different levels of success throughout your life and your career. At this stage of your life where you are, Nir Bashan, how do you define success?
I think success is reaching one person at a time, Adam. Like, I'm hoping somebody listens to this podcast and goes, man, I have an idea, and they go out and do it. If one person in the audience that I keynote to gravitates towards an idea, it changes the world.
I love it. Nir, I want to thank you so much for joining me, and everyone out there. If this episode meant something to you, leave a review rating. It goes a long way. You could find out more about Nir at thesolutionmindset.net. His new book is out. It dropped on December 30th. Not sure when the show's going to air. Porsche sponsoring. That's pretty cool, right? Like that's awesome.
100%.
Connect with Nir on LinkedIn. I'm going to link that up in the commentary. And everyone listening, thank you for listening to us on the podcast. Follow us on all the social media channels below. You know where to find us. Subscribe, comment, link, network, all that stuff. Remember, be good to yourself, be better to others, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.